Debut of Weather Extra on Fox 6, but we've been on digital for quite some time now.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed because today's actually the first sunset at 6:59, so the days are getting shorter, but this really brightened up my day.
They are. And I think we'll get right out of here at 6:59 West.
Yeah, so we'll catch it, right?
We'll get that last peak of sunshine because we're desperately holding on to it before those colder months come.
Yeah, we're certainly glad, though, you're here with us as we're now on WBRC Fox 6. This show has been on our streaming platforms, but it's all about extra. We're going to bring you extra weather information, starting with the next big thing that we'll get into right now. And first off, we've had a few isolated pop-up showers out there that we've been tracking for you. Most areas dry at the moment. 90 degrees in Tuscaloosa, 86 in Birmingham, 88 over in Anniston. But let's go in closer here on First Alert AccuTrack, and we'll show you where we have some of those pop-ups right now for folks that are watching around Coldwater Mountain. Actually, starting out in Pell City here, you can see around the Chula Vista exit a little downpour that's moving north, right about to cross I-20. I had one of these pop-ups yesterday. Wasn't a shower within 50 miles of my house, but it was right over my house, and it rained for like 45 minutes. Got an inch of rain. So these are not, I know we say showers a lot, but they're little tiny downpours that are popping up. But here we go around Coldwater Mountain. There's Coldwater, Oxford, and Anniston back in here. So the rain is just all around us here. It's moving north. We might get a little bit of rain around Morrisville, Alexandria. So a first alert there as that moves to the north. But this is the next big thing that we're talking about. We have the first alert for more of these isolated pop-ups for tomorrow. Now, all this is going to settle down tonight, but watch out tomorrow afternoon, going into tomorrow evening. Also, we have a cold front that's on the way Wednesday, and it's another one of those, we say cold front, but not a major drop in temperatures. But one thing that you will notice is a drop in the muggy levels, so the comfort levels making quite the improvement. And a first alert for two hurricanes now. I know we've been talking about we're tracking Hurricane Lee, but we now have Hurricane Margot that's developing out in the Atlantic. So a lot that we're watching for you, lots of updates on the First Alert weather app, and we've got a lot coming up right here for you, including the 7-day, and we're going to be going beyond the 7-day forecast as we continue right here on First Alert Weather Extra.
Welcome back to First Alert Weather Extra. I'm meteorologist Lauren Linehan. Around the world, devastating news this evening out of Africa after Storm Daniel brought flash flooding and widespread damage to eastern Libya. Storm Daniel made landfall over the weekend, bringing heavy rain and powerful wind gusts. With at least 150 dead, government officials fear at least 2,000 more could be deceased, while thousands more are reported missing. The Prime Minister of eastern Libya declaring a disaster zone after confirming entire neighborhoods were washed away. A curfew has been imposed and schools, ports, and shops are closed because of the storm. Though the system has weakened, Storm Daniel is expected to bring more wet weather into Egypt on Tuesday.
Also in North Africa and Morocco, search and rescue teams are still frantically combing through all the rubble looking for survivors after a rare 6.8 earthquake hit the country Friday night. This video shows the new look at all the damage. Officials say at least 2,000 people are dead, thousands injured. Those numbers are expected to increase. The United Nations estimates roughly 300,000 people have been affected by the disaster. Many who lost everything are now sleeping in the streets, waiting for food, water, other donations. It was the strongest earthquake to hit that part of North Africa in more than a century.
And out in the Pacific, some spectacular new images coming in from Hawaii. Mount Kilauea erupted again. You can see a fountain of lava shooting up into the air. Geologists say the eruption is at the summit crater. Authorities say right now the eruption does not present an immediate danger, but they have raised the alert level to red for potential hazards.
Back here in the U.S., drones have joined the wildfire fight in Mississippi after more than 500 wildfires were reported in the last month. Troy Johnson reports.
The U.S. Forest Service in Mississippi now has 4 drones ready to take to the skies when wildfires break out. Jacob Schuler is the module leader for Mississippi's drone unit. He says the drones can do almost anything helicopters can do.
Once we get on scene of the fire, we launch, we get up in the air, and we can provide eyes in the sky for the command staff, for the resources on the ground. So we basically can see what the fire is doing at all times.
According to the U.S. Forest Service, aviation accidents are the most common accidents in fighting wildfires. So while helicopters may be more versatile, the drones can operate with significantly less risk.
If the drone crashes, it's an expensive piece of equipment, but you ain't got to worry about life.
The drone's cameras also make work safer for crews on the ground because it can detect if the wind starts blowing in another direction and tell the ground crews to get to a safe area. 2 of the drones are also equipped with infrared cameras, which provide another advantage.
For example, if there's a thick column of smoke that you cannot see through, with that infrared camera, we can punch through that smoke column and see resources on the ground, what the fire is doing. We can fly at night with the thermal camera.
In the midst of these hot and dry conditions, the emphasis is on fighting fires. But the Forest Service also uses these drones to start them, making controlled burns safer too.
Basically, we drop little balls from the drone that ignite on fire after about 30 seconds. And it starts little fires throughout the forest, which clean up the forest, basically.
All right, still ahead on First Alert Weather Extra, a heartwarming tale in California as communities continue to clean up in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Hilary.
And we'll also be bringing you the latest on Lee and Margot in the tropics and what to expect now that we have reached the peak of hurricane season. And for all you weather and grammar geeks out there, like myself, we're also introducing a new segment called Weather Words. Plus, we'll be taking you beyond the atmosphere with a new comet and your best chance to see it.
Welcome back into First Alert Weather Extra. I'm Chief Meteorologist Wes Wyatt. Of course, today is a day of remembrance. 22 years ago, the terrorist attacks happened on September 11, 2001. Most of us, we know exactly where we were when that day happened. I know where I was. I had actually started a job as Chief Meteorologist it was my first job, and certainly weather was the last thing on my mind after things started to unfold. But do you remember what the weather was like the day that happened and things that were happening? Mickey Ferguson and meteorologist Matt Daniel will take an interesting look back at the weather patterns on that fateful day.
So today we're going to talk about the weather that happened on this date back in 2001. And what's interesting about the weather that day is there was a hurricane off the East Coast.
It's very similar to the setup that we're dealing with this week. We have a hurricane out in the Atlantic. This one was just to the east of Bermuda, the one this week just to the west of Bermuda, but it could have impacted things differently had we not had a cold front come through.
That's right. So Hurricane Aaron formed off the coast of Africa back in August 30th of 2001, became a Category 3 with winds up to 120, and Aaron actually passed 105 miles east-northeast of Bermuda, and it was actually the longest-lived hurricane in 2001 Atlantic hurricane season.
We had a cold front that came through on this date 22 years ago, and it helped to steer that hurricane away from the continental U.S. Now, you remember when the planes hit, we had clear skies, blue skies that day, but had that cold front not come through, potentially that hurricane could have hit very close to New York, and that could have delayed flights on that date, could have changed the whole scenario.
That's right. There would have been a lot of wind and rain, flight delays and cancellations, but because that cold front moved through, it was a really nice morning, and unfortunately that allowed that event to happen. And this is a view from satellite from NASA showing the Twin Towers and that plume of smoke when those planes crash into those buildings. But we're always going to remember all the lives that were lost on that horrible day back on September 11th, 2001.
All right, thanks for that report there, Matt and Mickey. And since we're on the topic of hurricanes, meteorologist Lauren Linehan joins us now. We've reached the peak of the hurricane season, Lauren. Now we have 2 hurricanes that we're tracking in the Atlantic Basin.
Yeah, Wes, and 2 additional areas to watch. The climatological peak of hurricane season was this past Sunday. So we are right at the peak, and September is the month where you see the most activity. So no surprises to see a very active Atlantic Basin. Before we get to Lee and Margot, we do want to just shout out the 2 little areas that we're watching that are just off of the west coast of Africa. You can see this area shaded here in yellow. A disturbance has a low chance of development over the next week. I think the next one to watch will actually be this disturbance that you're seeing here. As it moves off to the west-northwest, it does have about a medium chance of development over the next several days. The next names on the list are going to be Nigel and Ophelia. But let's look at the 2 systems that we're watching. We've got Hurricane Lee, which is going to be bringing a rip current risk and rough surf through the western Atlantic as we go through the week. You'll notice we are now seeing the western or the eastern portion of Massachusetts included within the cone of uncertainty. So it may just be brushing past New England by Saturday as a Category 1 hurricane. Now that could mean that they could be seeing some heavier rain, some wind, and of course dealing with that rough surf. So not great beach conditions along the Atlantic coast, but then we also have Margot that formed out in the middle of the Atlantic. The good thing about Margot is that even though it's a hurricane, it's going to be staying out over water. We can always deal with a fish storm, but Wes, as always, we're going to be keeping a close eye on the tropics.
All right, thanks to Lauren. New research suggests that cold weather can affect those living with high blood pressure. I know some of those games over the weekend probably didn't help out, but researchers presenting the study to the American Heart Association found that on average, some adults' blood pressure increased by up to 1.7 millimeters in winter, and that's compared to the summer. The study was conducted on 61,000 adults between 2018 and 2023. Experts also say that things like stress and diet, of course, are a factor in high blood pressure. More than 122 million people in the U.S. suffer from high blood pressure.
Thanks, Wes. Well, according to new data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the U.S. has seen more billion-dollar weather and climate disasters in 2023 than ever before. So far, the U.S. has been hit with 23 disasters that have cost more than $1 billion, beating the previous record of 22 events in 2020. NOAA is also still analyzing Hurricane Idalia and whether other events, including droughts in the South and the Midwest, may have surpassed the $1 billion mark. The country's costliest disaster year on record was 2017, coming in at a whopping $383 billion. This was the year of the destructive California wildfires and 3 major hurricanes, Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. And now to take you beyond the atmosphere, a newly discovered comet called Nishimura will be closest to Earth around sunrise on Tuesday. It's already visible from Earth and can even be spotted with the naked eye. It'll be about 780 million miles away, casual, and will be at peak visibility just before sunrise. According to NASA, another good time to see this new comet will be this weekend on Sunday, September 17th. But can't make it this weekend? You can spot it again in December during the Sigma Hydrant's meteor shower. And scientists say the debris from the new comet could make the December shower more active. Well, when we return, Wes breaks down rain chances over the next 7 days. And I'll take you beyond the 7-day, but first, here's a look at today's Weather Almanac. Welcome back to First Alert Weather Extra. And as the name suggests, we're always going to give you that little extra something here on this show. So I wanted to share with you one of my favorite words. And I don't know about y'all, I'm a word geek, love words. So of course I love weather vocabulary. And this, I think, is one of the best words in the weather vocabulary, but a lot of people may not know about it. Petrichor. Doesn't it just sound so satisfying rolling off the tongue? Petrichor is actually the smell that you get when it rains, that you smell outside, and that's where they have monetized on so many different candles on that smell. So we all love a good rain smelling candle, and we just love to step outside ahead of the rain coming. So what causes that? Well, believe it or not, it's actually oils within plants and rocks. When you have dry weather, you get these oils, these compounds that form on rocks and plants. But then when the rain comes, that releases the oils into the air, and winds take that up, and that's what you smell. Think about when you pour champagne into a bottle and those bubbles rise to the surface. It's the same thing, those oils rising to the surface. You just don't want some wind to come by and knock over your champagne bottle, Wes, but petrichor, you can use it to impress your friends at dinner parties.
Love that, those candle flavors. By the way, but I didn't see the name petrichor on the actual candle there. So, but you know now, all right? Remember that next Scrabble game you have, okay? Oxford, right now we are looking at kind of a hazy view. This is from the Calhoun County 911 camera there at Coldwater Mountain, and we've seen a couple of scattered areas of rain, and where these little pop-ups, you look at the radar, doesn't look like much, but it is pouring in some of these locations. We have some rain that's lifting north around Blue Mountain right now. Anniston, hey, we're getting a little bit of rain. You can see they're moving north Sacs and around the Weaver area. First alert, this is moving your way. Looks like it's going to hold together. Maybe Jacksonville and Alexandria will get some of that rain there moving further north, but that's the one heavier downpour that we've seen. We've had some pop-ups though throughout the afternoon and into the evening hours here. We saw some around Shelby County, into parts of West Alabama. Let's go into our forecast here, and we basically what we're looking at, we have a little axis here off to the south and the east where we're seeing more of these little pop-up downpours. Air's a bit more humid in those locations. The moisture in the atmosphere is a little more present, so that's why we've been seeing a couple of those isolated pop-ups. It's going to happen again tomorrow. We'll see more of these isolated showers out there. Temperatures will be topping out in the 90s. I want to show you though, as we get into from Tuesday and into Wednesday, what's going to happen is we actually have a front that's going to move in from the north, and you can see into Wednesday we might still have a few scattered showers, but once the front moves south, that drier air takes over. You'll see as we go to the muggy meter, and what you're looking at here are the dew points, and those values will drop way off as we get into Wednesday night and Thursday. We won't see a major drop in temperatures, but once this dry air takes over and pushes all this very humid air to the south, we're going to be looking at zero rain chances by Thursday, but also that fall feel, more of a dry feel to the air, especially during the early mornings. That's when you're really going to notice it. But that's going to be temporary, because by the weekend, one thing we are watching for Friday and is Saturday and Sunday is we will have scattered storms coming back. It looks like Saturday during the day. I know we got a lot going on. We got concerts. We got the state fair in town. Just check in with us for updates. But the way it looks right now, it's still kind of scattered. But as we get closer to Saturday, we'll be able to pinpoint where in the coverage area we could see some of those afternoon storms. But notice after tomorrow, at least the temperatures back off with highs in the 80s there through the end of the week, with overnight lows in the 60s. And right now it looks dry, at least for Monday and next week. And I mentioned this earlier. Notice at the top of the screen, sunset time 6:59. Yesterday was the last 7 o'clock sunset for the year, and next time that happens, April 21st. So certainly a sign that the days are getting shorter, but does that mean any cooler air is on the horizon? Well, we're going to take you beyond the 7-day forecast now as we go back over to meteorologist Lauren Linehan.
Yeah, Wes, you know, we were talking about those temperatures maybe eventually cooling down, and you're like, oh, well, it's going to start, the sun's going to start setting before 7 o'clock now. So is there some hope in the forecast? Nope, check it out. 8 to 14 days from now still looks like across Alabama. Generally, we're going to be seeing a forecast that favors above average temperatures. That's not to say we couldn't get these little measly cold fronts to come through and provide us a little dose of lower humidity, some cooler mornings, but it still looks like we're going to have some heat to deal with. But I mean, it's Alabama. We expect this into October, right? Here's a look at those potential high temperatures over the next couple of weeks. This is September 17th through 26th. And you notice the model data spitting out maybe 90s. I got to tell you, though, this model has run hot all summer to the point where it's almost ridiculous. So you see this and you're like, okay, it's generally going to be warmer, but we want to take it with a grain of salt. It's not the gospel. But hey, some 60s in the forecast in September. We'll take that. Maybe we can get some 50s in there eventually. As far as rainfall chances, we've been talking about a few shots of rain here over the next 7 days. One of those being as we go into the weekend. So first alert for some scattered storms, but it does look like 8 to 14 days from now, we may be trending below average. And September and October are historically some of our driest months here in Alabama. So that's right where we should be. Nothing too unusual. Well, that's beyond the 7-day, but check this out. As major cleanup continues in parts of California in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Hillary, a group of Marines has stepped in to help with cleanup efforts. Marian Bouchot reports.
More than 24 Marines answered the call to help after extreme flooding in the Panorama neighborhood in Cathedral City.
You know, they all come in and they're busting their butts and getting stuff done, and it makes me proud.
Rick Ravanello's home was one of the many that suffered major flooding. As a Marine veteran who served 10 years, Ravanello welcomed the new generation of service members.
All right, and they're pulling stuff out of our house, and don't even want to thank you. Because we're doing this because, you're an American, you're a patriot. That's why they're doing it, and I'll never forget that rest of my life.
The Marines came from the 29 Palms base. All of them have about 6 months of training so far.
The amount of force that you can bring in just a small team, it's different than a lot of communities have access to.
The cleanup effort was organized by one of their instructors, Marine Daniel Ballou.
And so that wall went all the way across too, right?
I try to find opportunities for them to be able to get off base, come out and do community service stuff, find something that's physically demanding so that they can kind of burn off some of that energy that you get from just sitting in the classroom for too many days.
The Marines spent the day shoveling mud out from multiple flooded homes, supporting the recovery efforts as families work to rebuild everything they lost.
And I'll never forget that rest of my life.
You know, Wes, hate to see natural disasters, but communities always end up being so resilient and helping one another in the wake of these storms.
Oh, that's when I was actually speaking to a group yesterday and talking about that after April 27th and how we always, especially here in Alabama, certainly pull together. But looking at this forecast, Lauren, we have a chance for a few isolated showers next couple of days, and especially watching this weekend. I'm going to have updates tonight starting at 9 o'clock.
And you can catch us here on Weather Extra now every weeknight, not just on streaming, but here on the TV. We'll see you again tomorrow night. Have a safe and happy Monday evening.